Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Burdick, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time. And it's a very special story time because it is our first ever episode of Story Beats, where I take one of the story decks as provided by Wizards of the Coast and put it through its paces on Magic Arena. In case you missed it, Wizards has started doing this thing where they publish a bunch of these house-made decks for each major set release. We got 10 new decks for Wilds of Eldraine, covering all sorts of strategies, and most of them are pretty budget-friendly, which is great, but we still need to figure out if they're any good. So today, I've got Beanstalk Blitz, a green and blue deck that ramps into giants and is supposed to represent Troyan climbing the beanstalk to, steal treasure, I guess. Let's take a look at the deck's official description from the Wizards website, which I've got the link for down below. Everyone loves to strike gold. Some dig for it, some stumble upon it. Troyan steals it from a giant goose hydra. Having left Ravnica after the devastation of the Phyrexians, Troyan finds himself loving life in Eldraine, climbing beanstalks and stealing from the giants. This deck loves playing spells the size of the sky. It focuses on spells mana value 5 or greater, using Troyan Gutsy Explorer to help you pay for them with extra benefits each time one is cast. So that's our game plan, and here's the deck list. The notable cards here are Troyan, the new legendary uncommon who can provide us with 2 mana if we use it to cast what I'm calling big spells, and Up the Beanstalk, which is an enchantment that draws us a card when we cast a big spell. And then we've got Mother Goose, which is an excellent place to pour our extra mana and make a huge flying threat that comes with some food tokens. We can turn those food tokens into more card draw or gain some life back or bargain them when we cast Thunderous Debut, which might turn up more giants like Hamlet Glutton or Stormkeld Vanguard. So yeah, this deck looks like it can put out some really big bodies and can attack pretty hard, but is it fast enough to survive against aggressive strategies? And can it slip under control decks that just threaten to counter our giant plays? Let's find out in today's Story Beats. Okay, here we go. First Story Beats battle with Beanstalk Blitz. Say that one 3 times fast. We've got a bunch of lands. We've got our Up the Beanstalk. Perfect. Giant and a card we're not going to cast until tomorrow, but let's keep it. So early on, we definitely want to set up our Beanstalk. We want to find cards that ramp us or some adventure cards that we can kind of tuck aside for later. Our first land drop is going to be Edgewall In because it comes into play tapped. And so this one's kind of neat. It's new from Eldraine. All the cards in here are from Wilds of Eldraine, actually. When it enters the battlefield, well, it comes in tapped, and we choose a color, and then we get to tap it for that color for the rest of the game. And later on, we can pay 3, tap it, and sacrifice it to return a card that has an adventure from our graveyard to our hand. And a bunch of our giants have adventures, so that could be useful way later, but we'll see. All right, opponent has opened with Evolving Adaptive, so that's going to grow pretty quickly. We could just drop our Beanstalk here. Other alternative would have been Scarecrow Guide, who I think is mostly in here as bargain fodder or just for the flavor of going up the Beanstalk. I mean, there was no character like that in the story, but I like that it's evocative of those tales. I think that's pretty cool. All right, opponent has added Quarian Beastcaller and dropped an oil counter on their Evolving Adaptive, so we're already under some pressure. We need to find some answers here. So turn 3 gets us another land. And so we could do a Goose Mother, but we won't... Oh, we would get 1 food token, because if X is 1, half of that would be half, and it rounds up. So we could have a 3/3 flyer here. That would be all right. It's probably the best use of our mana this turn. So we'll just make X1. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to draw with Up the Beanstalk, but that's all right. And then turn 4, we're good for Sky Beast Tracker. or double spelling Collector's Vault and Scarecrow Guide. Plenty of lands to keep going here. Maybe we will get all the way up to the Thunderous Debut. Probably not if our opponent is going in on the partner's stack here. This is going to make a pretty scary board. Yeah, a 5/5 and a 3/3. So I guess I'm worried about the adaptive just continuing to get bigger. So trading it for the Goose right now is probably our best plan. All right, we're down to 13. They have massive creatures, and this deck doesn't really have, like, good answers. We've got some bounce, but I don't know if it's better to just, like, play a chump blocker and eat some food here, or I guess we're going to put down a giant and see if we can at least slow some of the attacks. All right, so combat step again. They just keep throwing counters on the Beast Caller, because even if that dies, those just get spread around. So I think we'll take 7 and hope they don't have a way to give this double strike. All right, so they burn a card to get rid of our giant, and we're down to 6. And we just find more lands. So, well, the good news is they don't have trample, so we can do the guide. And then do we just eat this food for insurance or drop Collector's Vault, which doesn't really help us? I think we'll just eat the food. Stay out of burn range. All right, back up to 9, but opponent has a very big board and our giants are nowhere to be seen. Another thing our deck doesn't have is any planeswalkers. They've got a Nissa here, throwing out some very big tokens. All right, well, it's a good thing we kept some food there. So I think we're going to have to chump block their biggest attack. We're going to take 8 and go to 1. And yet another land. Okay. So I guess we are pretty much dead here. Collector's Vault is a fun card. Kind of represents all the treasure that the Giants had hidden up in their cloud castle. Now we got to discard something. And, yeah, this Stormkeld Vanguard isn't going to do it, so I think we're done. Opponent makes another token, and they're going to attack for the win here, so we'll have to try again with our Beanstalk Blitz. All right, here we go. Another game with Beanstalk Blitz. This time we've got 4 lands and a Beanstalk Worm, which is actually one of my favorite openings that we can have. This will let us drop an extra land on turn 2, which I really like. That'll set us up great for a Mother Goose or get us into Balloonist Gatekeeper. So hopefully things go better this time. It's important to remember this is technically a budget deck, right? We've only got 6 rares in here. 2 of which are the Restless Lands that come into play tapped. So I would suggest maybe swapping those out for something else if I was building this for real. But we're going to plant beans and get to play an extra land here. So we'll have 4 lands on our 3rd turn, which is enough to drop a Galvanic Giant. Or put down a pretty big Goose Mother, you know? Opponent has a Dawnheart Geist, a Spirit Warlock, and Will, Scion of Peace. Interesting. All right, so do we want to make a 4/4 Goose Mother? I think I want Galvanic Giant here, so she's going to be just a 3/3. But whenever we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, we get to tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. That's pretty good. We just need to find a 5th land, and then we could do a 5 mana Goose Mother. That'd be pretty good. Opponent with an interesting list here. The Modern Age is not one that we see very often. But thanks to Dawnheart Geist gaining life off of enchantments and Will's cost reduction, they're able to play quite a bit in a single turn. So we found a land. It is Evolving Wilds, which for some reason is in this deck. That's, again, the list Wizards gave me. You know, I'm just playing what they provided. So this is something you'd probably want to upgrade as quick as possible. Maybe Llanowar Wastes would be better. Just about anything that doesn't come into play tapped. Since our stuff is so expensive already. So I think we're going to do Tempest Heart here, a 3/4 elk. And we're not going to attack. They probably wouldn't block, and it wouldn't really be enough damage against their life total. I'd rather keep our giant to block their attacks. So Tempest Heart, whenever we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, we get to put a 1/1 counter on it. So this is going to grow. And now that we have 5 lands, we can do our Beanstalk Worm, we can do a pretty sizable Goose Mother. If we get one more, we could do this Gatekeeper, which is really big. We can also use her to bounce stuff with her entry denied adventure. Alright, opponent has Might Stone and Weak Stone, and they're choosing to give a creature -5/-5, so they're going to kill our Tempest Heart probably before it gets too big, or the giant who's threatening to tap down their board. All right, they want to get rid of the heart. That's okay. All right, so our opponent hasn't really played anything airborne yet, so I think Goose Mother here for 3, X being 3, that would still make her 5. We kind of lose out on like a food because it's not an even number. Although I guess we don't, because it rounds down. I keep forgetting it. Since it rounds down, this will still make 2 foods? Yeah, we're good. All right. And I don't want to give up the giant because she is going to be our key to keeping Will tapped, which is going to prevent them from using that discount ability, which I kind of like. All right, their Vector Guider has flipped, but that's not a problem for our 5/5 Goose. Goose Hydra. Bird Hydra, excuse me. Second wedding announcement. Alright, their board's getting a little bigger. So I think I like attacking here, giving up a food to draw a card. So they're going to take that damage. Unfortunately, the Goose Mother is legendary, so we can't play another one, but we could use our Beanstalk Worm, which has reach. That'll stop their Vector Glider. We can also just bounce it, but then we'd only have like 4 mana left to work with, so maybe it's Troyan. And bounce something? Guess we just start bouncing some of these tokens. Alright, so we didn't get to tap Will down again that turn, but they only have 1 card left in hand, so I don't think they're going to be getting too much value out of him. They are able to make some attacks here, though. Alright, so no blocks. We'll take a chunk of damage, but... Okay. So Hamlet Glutton can gain us life when it enters the battlefield. And it's big enough that it taps down Will. We could bargain it to make it cheaper, but we've got Troyan who can tap for a bunch, so we'll just let that pay for it. Gain some life back, attack with our Goose, draw another card. Alright, so we could still drop a Scarecrow. That just gives us an extra blocker against some of these tokens, or maybe against the Vector Glider in a pinch if we really need it. Opponent continuing to just gain life with enchantments. Blue-white, doing blue-white things. Alright, so they're getting in for 3 with the glider. I don't need to give up the Scarecrow here yet. Alright, opponent's board is getting pretty wide, so I think we can put down our worm, which lets us keep their will tapped. I think I'm even okay sending in this glutton. He's gonna take out 2 of their tokens. Sure. Really, when they have like the double anthem from the wedding festivities, you really want to keep their board as small as possible. I think next turn we might even play the other Goose Mother. We'll have to give up the first one, but we'll be able to make this one much bigger and get a bunch more food out of it. Okay, opponent found Urza, Lord Protector, and they've got the Might Stone, Weak Stone, so they're gonna get to meld this guy. That could be bad for us. Alright, so they're attacking with their 4/5 glider. I think we're okay trading that off with our Beanstalk Worm. We could also use Troyan here to loot. I forget that he has a second ability. I don't know if we'll find anything better than Goose Mother, but it's worth trying. Yeah, we don't need the Scarecrow. Alright, so we have 8, technically 10 mana. So we could do Sky Beast Tracker and Balloonist Gatekeeper. It doesn't really help us with the Urza problem. But it does at least keep will tapped down, I guess. And now the Goose Mother can attack, eat this food, draw us a card. Well, it's a land, we might as well play it. Alright, so they are using the stone, getting their Urza Planeswalker. Exiling our Goose Mother. Oh no. Little do they know, we have another one waiting. Although he can just keep doing that, right? Yeah, they could exile a second thing before we even get to attack with it.
Anything made can be unmade.
Alright, so we drew Beanstalk Worm. So we could play that, tap. I mean, it doesn't really matter, their stuff is getting too big. So I guess we just go for the biggest Goose Mother we could. Make a lot of food. Let's actually just make her... Make her an 8/8. Keep will tapped. And no attacks here, but next turn we could do Beanstalk Worm, tap down their glider.
I am Urza Plains.
Oh, I forget Urza gets to do his stuff twice, so they can tick him up and then tick him down to get rid of our... well, at least we got rid of Urza. I guess that's not the worst.
Unnecessary cost.
But I was really counting on that Goose to just punch in for the win. Now we got to come up with a new plan. Alright, so Edgewall in, we can sacrifice to get an adventure creature back. Do we have anything like that? Tempest Heart, draw some more cards. Opponent's gonna make a ton of knights. Alright, I think this battle's either gonna be won or lost in the sky at this point. Interesting, they're going all in trying to get Teferi to flip here. Nope. Alright, so I think... Yeah, this is not looking great for us, but we can at least deny them flipping to fairy for one turn. Well, gain some life. And a tap land. Outstanding. Do we use Troyan to discard that and try and find something better? Alright, so if we play this, we'll only have 4 mana left, not enough to follow it up with the worm. So I guess we're just gonna do the worm. And this time they just have a ton of knights that are gonna crack the invasion. They'll get to fairy. And we're going to continue to fall further and further behind. Alright, so they bounce our only creature with reach. And are they going to go after the... I mean, they could just attack me and, like, win at this point, right? They've got, what, 7 of these guys? There you go. Yeah, just go face. Even if I eat all the food I can. And the Giants did not get there again. Let's try one more time. Okay, here we go. Beanstalk Blitz. Once again, we got both of our colors, plenty of lands. Not a lot to do in the early turns, but this deck doesn't really play any other way. So there we go. We found Troyan. I like that. So in the story, Troyan gets hired by Ruby and Kellen to help them climb the Beanstalk to recover the stolen magic mirror. And the way they do it, he just kind of lists himself for hire as he's an adventurer for hire, a professional adventurer for hire, I think is how he actually phrases it. And he doesn't really explain that he's from Ravnica or anything, and so Kellen just looks at him and he figures, well, there's a lot of magical creatures on Eldraine that I've never encountered or know anything about, so yeah, you're probably just like a normal dude and we need your help. So they hire him, and it's not until later that he reveals he's not from the plane of Eldraine, and it's pretty cool. So I think we can use our Plant Beans adventure here to drop an extra land, unless this double islands represents trouble for us. No, okay. All right, so we'll get another land down. And then we still have 3, and if we use the 2 from Troyan, we can drop a 5-drop right here. Which I think I'm okay doing. Or trying to do. Hey, it resolves. Alright, so opponents got Hilda's Crown of Winter, a legendary artifact that can tap our Beanstalk Worm, and then they've got Skrelv's Hive making some tokens, and they've got Hilda herself. Pretty cool. Haha. Alright, so what is the bigger threat to us? Skrelv's Hive or Hilda's Crown? Because we have the Stormkeld Vanguard, which can destroy an artifact or an enchantment. I guess I'm worried about them tapping down like a single big thing, because our deck doesn't really go wide. So if we can, all right, they want to tap Troyan. I think we can, in response, tap him to make some mana, which we will then use for Mother Goose. Goose Mother, excuse me. Get a 5/5, make some food. Seems alright. We can even get in here with our worm. All right, opponent at 14. We've got a pretty decent sized board. They're gonna try to go wide and get around us with these tokens. I mean, I guess we also got to watch for like a board wipe here, because they can recover from that with Skrell's Hive just making more stuff every turn. We can't. Alright, I think first we attack with Goose Mother and use the food to draw, unless they tap her down. And they're just going to make an elemental token. Okay. So that makes it a little bit harder to attack with our Beanstalk Worm. I don't really want to trade it off for a token. So we could either play Sky Beast Tracker or get our Vanguard out. I think we can just do that. I want to have multiple threats on board so that their crown is a little bit less good. If they can just keep tapping our single best thing every turn, then that puts us pretty far behind. But if we have multiple things, they're going to need help from Teferi. Outstanding. So again, our deck, 6 rares, 2 of which are lands, no planeswalkers, no mythics. So we're kind of fighting an uphill battle here, even in the unranked just play queue. People like to show up with good cards, and we brought some commons and uncommons. And the Goose Mother, I mean, she's good. I don't know, it scales well. Getting the food is good. But yeah, Hilda's just popping off here with all of these tokens. Tapping our board. Fortunately, they are out of mana. Alright, well, I want to put as much pressure on them as possible, so we're just going to send our 3 biggest to face. Sack of food to get a card. If they want to start trading off some of these tokens, I guess that's alright. Perhaps in hindsight, Goose Mother should have just took out Teferi while we had the opportunity, but we don't need another Troyan. Another Goose Mother, though. Alright. Opponent to 8. This is a growing problem over here. These mites are eventually going to just swarm in. Opponent, again, with the beautiful synergy between Hilda's Crown and Hilda. Crown taps somebody, then Hilda lets you pay mana to create a 4/4 elemental. Ugh. Alright, opponent's gonna stick us with some poison. Well, I think we're just gonna do another Goose Mother. Doesn't need to be too big. No, I want to pay with you. Keep my lands out. So she'll hopefully draw us a card with Up the Beanstalk. Another land. I think this deck has like 26 lands in it or something ridiculous. And so at this point, yep, they just tap down our worm. Make another 4/4 elemental. Yep. Okay. Now they've got an untapped crown to tap down our last blocker. Oh my gosh. Our giants are powerless against the Ice Queen. All right, so I'm counting 15, 20, 28, 30 some odd damage here if they swing out. That'll do it. All right, 27 damage, right? We went from 17 to negative 10. Ugh, not great. Let's take one last look at the deck and share some final thoughts. All right, so Beanstalk Blitz, budget deck, again, one of 10 given to us by Wizards of the Coast, designed to kind of capture a story moment in a fun and flavorful way. And I certainly respect that. I mean, I love flavorful decks, but they also still need to perform well, especially if they're asking you to spend, wild cards or gems or whatever to acquire these cards through packs or drafting or whatever. This one felt a little on the weaker side. I like the idea of it, but there are definitely some cards here that are in strictly for flavor that probably could be other better stuff. Starting with just the lands, we got some basics. That's totally fine. The Restless Vinestalk, that's the location in the story where Troyan climbs up. So I understand why it's included here, and having a land that can turn into a creature certainly is valuable, especially if the game goes long. If they wipe your board, having something that you can animate and attack with is fine. But you could cut these or allocate your rare cards elsewhere. The inn, probably don't need this at all. We have very few adventure creatures that I would want to get back out of the graveyard anyway, and it's just another tapped land that really hurts us. Same with Evolving Wilds. Obviously, being able to fix your color on turn 1 is all right. So maybe having 2 in here isn't the end of the world, but there was that, I think, one game where we were on 4 lands, drew this as our 5th, and that slowed us down in playing out like all of our 5-drop stuff, which is the crucial threshold. So I would tidy up these lands quite a bit. You've got options, stuff like Yavimaya Coast might be better. You're going to take a damage here or there occasionally, but I think that's better than Evolving Wilds. Or potentially Dreamroot Cascade. It might be tapped early, but not later when you need to hit lands 5, 6, 7, whatever. Other cards I kind of tucked in the sideboard here that might help out. Stuff like Disdainful Stroke doesn't break the giant theme. I mean, it's got giant in the art and giant flavor text and everything. So you could make some room for these just to kind of protect you against planeswalkers or other big threats that this deck can't really handle, board wipes. Or if you wanted some way to interact with your opponent, you could look for Misleading Motes, just kind of a generic Eldraine fantasy kind of removal spell that's not against the lore here. This doesn't happen in the story to Troyan, but this is something that could pop up and affect a creature. Probably the best swap in here would be Extraordinary Journey. I know it's got Kellen in the art, but it's an X spell that works great with Troyan because you can use his 2 mana for spells with X in their mana cost, and it does a lot. So it exiles up to X target creatures, and then you can use that to exile your opponent's side of the board. Your giants can now attack and not get chumped block. If you wipe out tokens, they never get to come back. If you wipe out expensive stuff, they got to pay a lot to bring it back. And every time they do, you get to draw more cards, which is really good. So I would probably cut Thunderous Debut for starters and instead run Extraordinary Journey. I think that'd be a much more appropriate card. Although I guess, again, the flavor here is supposed to be it's like a giant and the beanstalk worm, and looks cool. It's a cool looking card. We never got to resolve it. 8 mana's a lot. The rest of the stuff, Hamlet Glutton, sure, we got random food tokens, or I guess you could feed even the Scarecrow to him, get him down pretty cheap, and he's basically Colossal Dreadmaw, 6/6 trample, gain some life. He's all right. The Vanguard, having a way to destroy artifacts and enchantments, that's awesome. And he's a decently sized body with kind of the can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. There's not really a keyword for that, but some people think of it as, what is it? Not overrun, and not even intimidate. Daunt, I think, was kind of thrown around as a name at one point, whatever. Balloonist Gatekeeper, a little bit of sorcery speed bounce, not always the best thing. This card probably could have been pushed a little harder, to be honest. I know it's just a common, but a 6 mana 6/5 with a 2 mana sorcery capped at value 3 or less bounce, not super good. I might replace that with something. Love Beanstalk Worm, though. He's right at that crucial 5 mana. 5/4 reach is very efficient and effective. Being able to ramp into himself in a way with the plant beans. This is probably one of the better cards in the deck. I really like it. Galvanic Giant, 4 mana 3/3 that does really nothing until you play something with a 5 or greater, but then you get to tap something really for 2 turns. So the payoff, the ceiling is quite high. The floor, though, is also kind of low, and her adventure is an instant that can draw us 4 cards, and then we get to keep the better 2. So that's all right, but it is really expensive. I would maybe go down to just 1 of her, and maybe go up on a tracker, a 2/4 with reach. I mean, that's a giant spider. That's a proven stat line that's been around for 30 years at this point. This one has a nice little upside on it, though. You can squeeze some extra food out whenever you cast your bigger guys, so I like that. And then the Tempest Heart can grow with all those bigger guys. Quite good. The off-color instant adventure, which is just a double loot. Not really getting card advantage out of that per se, but I mean, there were times where we were flush with lands in hand, and maybe you want to try to ditch those and get something better, but you also do want to be playing a lot of your lands with this deck. So I don't know. I think this is an interesting inclusion. 2 is probably the right number. 3 Troyan also feels good. You don't want a whole bunch of him, but he is a crucial part of ramping and looting. But again, usually we're playing everything before we get a chance to really shuffle it away or discard it, draw something else. But he is the face of the deck, and my personal favorite character from the Eldraine story, so I wanted to start with Troyan's deck here to kick off this series. But I'm curious to hear what you think about him and his performance down below in the comments. Down in the low end, Up the Beanstalk. Great card. I love that it replaces itself right away and then rewards you as the game goes on. It can be a huge value engine when you start dropping your 5s and 6s and stuff like that. Collector's Vault, again, with the looting theme, making treasure kind of does ramp you and sculpts your hand a little bit, but this felt pretty slow. Probably should have been some way to interact with our opponent. Maybe this is what you cut to make room for Disdainful Stroke or the misleading moats or something. Scarecrow Guide, I mean, it's mostly just because it's another Beanstalk card. This could also kind of keep fairies and stuff off your back for a little while. You don't really use his color fixing, but the fact that he does have reach could be useful. And then Goose Mother, probably the MVP of the deck, really. She pairs beautifully with Troyan. He can tap for the extra mana to get her out there. She starts as a 2/2 flyer for 2. She's not even like a 0/0 that gets counter. She starts as a 2/2 for 2 that flies. And if you just give her 1 extra mana, you get a 3/3 that flies and makes a food, which can then draw you a card or gain you 3 life or do whatever. So she's really great. It is legendary, so you don't want too many of these in your hand either, but I would probably find room for a third one of those, or maybe even go up to 4, because our opponent was always trying to remove this given the chance. So those are the changes that I would make. Overall, I do, like I said, I like Troyan. I like the idea behind this deck and trying to do it all within the flavor of just Eldraine and the Giants and the Beanstalks. There's probably some better stuff you could ramp into, Titan of Industry, or this mana will get you closer to Atraxa, I guess, if you want to do that way. Those are all great cards still in Standard. But, take it where you want to take it. This is a cool budget list to start with. I gave you some ideas for upgrades and improvements, but let me know down in the comments what you're going to do with Beanstalk Blitz, or maybe you're going to skip this one entirely and see what the other 9 decks have to offer. If you want to see those, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. We'll see ya!